it here. You're really bringing it tonight. So yeah, let's everybody, I see those hands going, see those heart reactions up. Please offer Leslie some love in the chat as well. Thank you. Thank you, Leslie. We do appreciate you so much. Okay, so now let us move and groove a little bit. Let us move and groove a little bit. I'm going to ask us all to take another breath. Let us breathe, please. As the Spirit continues to descend upon this time, we open ourselves and we avail ourselves to that which is truth and that which is beauty and that which is love. And it is in remembrance of this vision statement of role that we gather tonight and we rally. You see, the revolution of love it's been going for a long, long time, long before any of us were here. And so with that, my friends, we just hook on to a wing of this revolutionary of love work and play and vision. We just catch the wave. And tonight I ask God that you allow us to catch that wave that has been going on since time immemorial, that we may come back into that knowing of who we are, remembering that we are made, come on now, that we are made in your holy image, that we are made in the likeness of you. And when that is at the center, we recall, if it is true for us, then it is true for everyone on this planet. Amen. And so the remembrance and the acknowledgement of the first step of creating a revolution of love is actually coming back to our Imago Dei. And catching that wave and saying, yes, I know that I am made in your holy image, that I am made in love, if it is better suited for some. And from that place, we are able to look without, from within to without and around, and say, yes, I do see you. I do hear you. I do love you. You are made. You are made. You are made in the image of God. It all should be so simple. And how does it get so messed up? If we all knew, if we all truly knew who we are and who we are to each other, how would things be different? The disconnections that cause compounded violence and oppression and hatred, at minimum, it would be greatly alleviated. At minimum, it all should be so simple then. And yet it is so terribly challenging, isn't it? And notwithstanding and not dismissing how the structures and the systems that are in place continue to hold violence and hatred in a culture that, as David mentioned, is full of white supremacy and colonialism. And so when we come into this revolution of love thing, when we read, or as Trevor read, the Revolution of Love vision statement, it's all very nice, isn't it? So we embrace people where they're at. You know, we're dedicated to justice. It's a brave space. And so why is this so challenging? We look around and we see over and over again replications of abuse and of cycles of violence ad nauseum. And so what can we do? One of the things that we can do is continue to work on any part of ourselves that holds prejudice and discrimination or any ism. It can start with us. And that's part of what we get to do here on Sunday nights. It's part of what we get to experience in a field that I would like to say is holy. This is a holy time that we get to be together and with each other and tell one another that we do see and hear and love you, one another, each other. And so we are in this last part of the vision statement, which says, no matter who you are, what you look like, where you come from, who you love, we welcome you, we love you. And so I'm going to ask you right now, I'm going to say it again, those lines, without we welcome you and we love you. And I'm going to ask you this. What does that mean to you? And when I ask you, just allow it to fall. Don't think too much about it. So let me say the lines and then I'm going to ask. No matter who you are, what you look like, where you come from, who you love. And what does that mean to you? And come off mute and please respond.
Well, may I?
Yes.
Well, it sounds an awful lot to me like love thy neighbor. I mean, I'm not from a particular religious tradition, but I mean, love thy neighbor, love thy poor neighbor, love thy unhoused neighbor, love thy black neighbor, thy white neighbor, thy gay neighbor, thy straight neighbor, whatever. I mean, it just sounds like a lot of that is bound up in a long-standing tradition of these simple words to love thy neighbor. That's where it lands with me for a start, anyway.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you. Others, no matter who you are, what you look like, where you come from, who you love, and what does that mean to you?
Hi, I'm Evie.
Hi.
She, her, hers, all my pronouns. And what it means to me is, first of all, everybody is included in those descriptions, no matter who you are, who you love, where you come from. And when I take that a step further, a little, maybe even radically, is that we also love people who hate. It's hard, but that's where the real challenge is and where our real work is. So that's what it means to me.
Thank you, Evie. Thank you. And I'm going to highlight too that this is all open for interpretation. As with most things that roll, this is yeah, this is open. This is open. I will leave that there. So no matter who you are, what you look like, where you come from, who you love, what does that mean to you?
Taylor X, what it means to me is that you are welcome here. And I don't mean that somebody tolerates who you love, where you come from, all that. Because tolerate is just barely one step away from hate. But I'm saying beyond acceptance, welcoming. That's what I believe love is welcoming. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Is there someone else that would like to say what this means to them before we move to the next question? So no matter who you are, what you look like, where you come from, and who you love.
I'd like to say something.
Yes, Kimberly.
To me, it's a matter of just total acceptance. No matter, even if we may disagree sometimes, there's still total acceptance of who I am, and I accept totally who you are. And that, to me, is what love is.
Thank you. Wonderful. And now, let's see. Okay, so now I'm going to ask, or I'm going to say it again, but this is a different question. So no matter who you are, what you look like, where you come from, who you love, this is different. We're going into a different zone now. How do you feel? How do you feel when you hear that? So this is a feeling. This is a feeling, a little bit different now. Drop down. So maybe those of you that have yet to answer, you can, yes, Nancy.
Unmute yourself.
There we go. Hi.
Hi.
It's good to be here. Well, both pieces that we're talking about here also bring me to, if we're talking about where we've come from and who we are, we're always evolving. And so it's also about accepting yourself. When you look at others and recognize that we all have this opportunity to grow in love and to be present in love and to be in the now. I'm learning all the time about who I'm becoming, and it is about becoming, and nothing is stagnant. So if we can not only love ourselves for now, but to love ourselves for the future, and to know that love is bigger than now, and bigger than ourselves, though it starts with ourselves. I think a lot of how we treat ourselves is how we treat others. And so I was thinking about how I feel about that with answering your question.
Thank you, Nancy. Beautiful. Others, how does it make you feel? Those lines of our vision statement. And I'm going to say before someone else answers, remember that last week we just came from the lines, we are the visionaries and the dreamers, architects of peace and justice, strategists creating a new world of what ought to be today. So you can feel now, it's literally a different tone, isn't it? We are coming into like the final boarding stages, if you will, of this vision statement that is lifting off, going into the final piece here. So feel that as well. Note that, maybe even check it in a somatic way in your body. And so again, no matter who you are, what you look like, where you come from, who you love. And I see a hand up, David and Margaret.
Yeah, so it's Margaret's hand. There you go. What you just said leads right into what I wanted to share, which was I feel that it's both, like I feel this deep in my bones, as Taylor X says all the time, that it's both a call to action. So how I act in the world, how I accept others, how I respond. And I also feel like it's a subversive resistance to like white supremacy, to all of the isms that are out there, that I can say this out loud, and that is a response to all of those isms and white supremacy, to claim that. And yeah, just to like really, again, in the marrow of my bones, as Taylor X likes to say. So that's how I feel. I feel it in my body. Yeah, and it propels me forward.
Thank you so much, Margaret. If I could have, that was almost like a plant. There was like a plant in the audience because and Trevor knows this because there are many slides with isms that we're going to look at now. So, but before we do that, is there anyone else that would like to speak to kind of this somatic, meaning things, how this lands in our body, how it lands in your body when you hear, no matter who you are, what you look like, where you come from, who you love, and how that maybe washes over you, and you know, maybe there's a dissenting voice here, like that, I don't feel comfortable with it, or I don't like it. Let's hear that too. Let's just fill it out just a wee bit more.
Okay. It's more to me like it's a manifesting of those things, and I have doubts that we can make these changes. But I also then work on myself to remember why I believe that we can, and we have throughout history made changes. And we just have to be, I like that persistent change. I really like that from the song. But yeah, I sometimes feel like it's the impossible dream.
I thank you for that, Evie. And I just want to kind of check in. How many others of you, or who else, pardon me, also has that doubt? Hands raised. Really? You all feel like we're going to do this? Okay, I see another hand. Yeah. That's amazing. You're all a real hopeful. You all are real grounded in faith and conviction and dedication. Because I certainly have that. I just don't live there. I don't live there anymore. But sometimes I think, I said this to my folks today, I'm a hopeful realist. I could, even on some days I might say I'm a hopeful pessimist. But I don't believe we can't live there, can we? We have to keep moving forward regardless. You know, David Weiss does a lot of work around the climate crisis and climate emergency, and that's real. I mean, who's to say what is going to happen here in a matter of how many years? And so to me, that's some very, we're up against it, is my point. And does that mean we don't do this work? Does that mean we stop believing? Does that mean we throw this all out, like this whole vision statement, especially this part? So Evie, I thank you for bringing that piece in, because I think that all of us at times have had parts of ourselves that have really been in deep quandary, or a dark night of the soul even. And it's about being in community together and continuing sometimes to draw upon each other's faith and belief and love and conviction and dedication. Of course, if you believe in a Godhead, that too. So, Okay, so let's move to, we're going to switch gears and we're going to finish this evening out with something pretty different. And Trevor, if you would be able to share those slides that we went over earlier, starting with the no matter. Yeah. So go back to the no matter one. Yes, perfect. So, and actually the one down from that. Thank you. So I did this, and I'm not saying this is the best or most perfect way to break down this part of our vision statement, because we are certainly not the sum of our identities or solely our social location, as it's sometimes called, or social location being our age or our gender or our racial identity, and so on. And the reason I'm getting so specific here, everybody, is because I feel if there's any vagueness about what we mean, that is dangerous, because we need to swing the door wide open and make sure that people know this is a brave space and that we are committed to actual inclusivity and diversity, that we are committed to these things and holding it down. So no matter who you are, I wrote underneath this, this could be referring to one's age or their gender or gender expression, gender fluidity, and also your ability. So I put those things, those identities under the no matter who you are. And as we continue to go through these slides, you'll see where I went with this. And so Trevor, if you could put the next slide. And so if someone wants to come off mute and read this, feel free.
I have it.
Thank you.
No matter what you look like, your age, size, looks, racial identity.
Thank you. And the next slide, please. And whoever would like to read this one.
I got it. No matter where you come from, your place of birth, status, class, religion.
Thank you. And the next slide, please. And a volunteer for this one as well.
Matter who you love. I'm sorry.
No matter who you love, your sexuality or orientation.
Yes. Wonderful. Thank you. So all of these, and we can just stay on the screen share, Trevor. So these are some of the yeses. We're saying yes to folks from different communities, people that identify maybe very differently from you yourself. We're saying, come on in, and we're not doing anyone any favors. Like I believe it was Taylor X who said, this isn't tolerating. We're saying at the Revolution of Love, you are welcome. We love you, because of simply who you are. So in this specificity, I realized we have to also look at any of the parts of ourselves that may be unclear or unconscious, simply unaware of the opposite. The opposite, I'll simply say it like that. So there is a list of isms now that we are going to look at. And Trevor, if you could go ahead in the slides. So this list, I did not compose this list. This is the resources down at the bottom when we get there. But this is a list that actually points back to our vision statement. So you will see here ableism and adultism and ageism are all on this slide. And I'm going to go ahead and I will read this slide. So the definition of ableism is systemic, and this is this particular person's definition. Systemic and systematic discrimination against alter, abled, or disabled people. This one, I I don't know if all of you will know this. Some of this is going to be very like, yes, I know, and some may be surprising. Adultism, systemic and systematic prejudice and discrimination against young people and children. Ageism, systemic and systematic discrimination against persons of an older age group. So as we're going through these, and you can hit the next slide, Trevor, see which ones that you may have experienced. And if you have, I should say before, you know, if this is triggering in any way, please do take good care of yourself, and know that this is a brave space that you are in. So would someone be able to read this, this slide, please, with these definitions?
Yeah, I can do that.
Thank you.
Anti-Semitism, systematic prejudice and discrimination towards Jewish people. Alloism, systematic prejudice and discrimination against people who are asexual. Classism, systematic prejudice and discrimination based on social or economic class.
Thank you, Leslie. Okay, and the next slide, please.
I'll do it.
Okay.
Cisgenderism and transphobia, systemic and systematic discrimination against transgender people. Colorism and shadeism, a form of systemic and systematic prejudice or discrimination in which people are treated differently based on the social meaning attached to favoring lighter skin color, distinct from racism, but derived from white supremacy. Colonialism. In the U.S. context, this is a form of systemic and systematic prejudice and discrimination against indigenous people or Native Americans. Like other forms of oppression, it intersects with racism and other isms.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Rob. And the next slide, please. Can I get a volunteer for this one?
I can do this one.
Thank you.
Ethnocentrism, systemic and systematic prejudice or discrimination against people who do not speak English as a first language. Heterosexism, systemic and systematic prejudiced attitude or discriminatory practices against homosexuals and queer identified people. Jingoism, an extreme form of patriotism that often calls for violence toward people who were not born in the US.
Thank you, Margaret. And now, yes, thank you. And I'll read this one, and then there's going to be one more, and I'm going to add right now. These will all be posted in our Facebook group for you to look at and meditate on or really take in. So let me read this one. Looksism, systemic and systematic discrimination or prejudice based on a person's physical appearance, often based on the media's presentation and definition of beauty. Saneism, a form of systemic and systematic discrimination and oppression based on a diagnosis or the perception of someone having been diagnosed with a psychiatric condition. And last one on this slide, at least, nativism, the policy and attitude of protecting the interests of native-born or established inhabitants against those of immigrants. Next slide, and a volunteer, please.
I can do this one. Racism, systemic and systematic discrimination or prejudice based on race. The idea that whiteness is superior and therefore has the right to dominate another race or races. Religious imperialism, systemic and systematic prejudice or discrimination against people who practice religions other than Christianity. Sexism, systemic and systematic prejudice, stereotyping, or discrimination against women on the basis of gender. and sizeism, systemic and systematic prejudice or discrimination based on a person's size.
Thank you, David. Okay. So let's come off the slide show for a moment, and we'll probably be going back, Trevor, just as an FYI. So some of those you may have experienced those if you're Jewish, depending on your sexuality, your orientation, depending on your gender. This is a fairly white dominant space. So those of us that look like me have not experienced racism, because there's no such thing as reverse racism, correct? I hope we're all very clear on that. The reason I believe this is very important to just go over, even if it's a repeat for some of you, is to be aware of some of the things that we are up against and any pockets of ourselves that hold one or more or many of those isms, even when we think we don't. Because I tell you, this work it's a constant journey, isn't it? For those of us that have been on the road for a while with it, it's a constant journey that is humbling, of realizing, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that I have adultism, or I have this, I have replicated that. So before, I don't think we're going to go into the homework piece. I think what I want to do to finish this out is to ask you to honestly look at those isms, to take an honest appraisal and inventory for where you in your life have personally committed such a thing, that where you have personally reenacted a system of oppression or violence, a personal example, as well as this. So first off that. And that is really the education piece. For those of you that might remember our role flowchart, part of what our Sunday nights are here for is to educate ourselves, is to consistently raise our awareness and our consciousness, yes? And part of that, under that healing bubble, and actually, Trevor, would you share the slideshow again and go down to the flow chart of role, so this way it makes a little more sense for folks? And there's a flow chart, just a couple there, one more, there it is. Perfect, thank you. So see everybody where it says healing, and it's a green little circle. And it says education, spiritual work, emotional and psychological work. So just to highlight right now, this part, this is the education part that we are getting to dive into. The spiritual work comes in the form of these services. And here's a little wing to it now. Okay, so everybody take that in. And one more thing, sorry. The healing is so that we can shift, and that way we can integrate, and that way we can become change makers, or like I say a lot of times, change agents. Do you see how this is all connected? And do you see how much you actually get on a Sunday night? So, okay, off the thing now, off the slideshow. So one of the ways that I believe we can make ourselves more sturdy when we educate ourselves, and as we continue to, I'll say that because I know some of you have been doing it, like I said, for a very long time, is by remembering the first thing I said on the onset of this talk tonight, this time tonight, and that is to remember your Imago Dei. This isn't to take away from the discomfort that this work should bring. Discomfort is a very important part of learning. I do believe that it is easier to see each other and to see one another as we truly are, and remember that we are connected when we are hooked in and plugged in to our Imago Dei. And so this is why for so many years I have said, remember who you are. Remember who you are, and that you are made in the image of God, or for maybe better said, the image of love. And so really take this in. And so maybe when we say, or you say, no matter who you are, what you look like, where you come from, who you love, maybe that's your prayer. Maybe that's a prayer you need to hear for yourself. Maybe that is in the style of Lectio Divina, an offering for your own self, so that you can continue to ready yourself for the work of change. Because if we stay in simply remembering who we are and our own Imago Dei, that isn't enough. We have to, as I just said at the beginning of this, we have to remember who people are to us. We have to see them in their totality. We have to recognize that somewhere in them, no matter maybe how occluded or how confused, that there is a part of them that is also made in that. See, that is the hope. That is the hope. That is some hope right there. That hope see, and this is what is present in Christianity, isn't it? Is the transfiguration. I like to say it's the transformation. We see this in the seasons. We see this as the seasons change. There is always this turn. There is always this possibility and this potentiality for anyone. So even the most desperate or disparate of figures or people that we meet, people that seem completely cut off from their Imago Dei, there is still some piece of hope there. It's a very tricky, fine line. It's a very tricky, fine line, because I don't believe we are supposed to hold space where we could get harmed, where we could waste time. We have work to do. We have work to do. And there are plenty of people, and the people right here, right now, you all, that right there is a conglomeration of folks that do believe. And even if, and most probably we have some ism within us that we need to integrate and heal. There is still the commitment, I believe, that you all have to that healing. So continue to educate. Those definitions are going to be posted in the Facebook group. I am going to do the homework thing. Here we go. Write this down. I'd like you to take 2 of the definitions, and I'd like you to research that thing, whether it's looksism or colonialism, and to add maybe to the definition, number 1. Number 2, to provide an example. And number 3, to look up an organization that is dealing with that ism. So I'm thinking we can do this in the Facebook group. Yeah, because we're running out of time. So we'll do this in the Facebook group. One of us is going to post on the worship team. And then everybody can take 2 of these things and research and add on to the definition. And number 2, provide an example. And number 3, provide a resource for us to engage this. That's the education part. The spiritual part is what? The spiritual part is remembering who you are and sinking deeply into that knowing. And that's just, I realize, a very cursory way of saying, look, there's a lot more that goes on. There's a lot more that goes on underneath that. It's about healing traumas. because the less we're healed in our traumas, and we've got the emotional body that needs that healing, it becomes hard to be resilient doing this work. So it will help you. It will help all of us to plug in to our Imago Dei, and then to never forget to always remember that. Even when it seems so challenging, remember that deep within somebody, that is within them. Don't tarry, don't get abused, don't get hurt in the sense of something nefarious. You can hold it, hold that space, and exit. No matter who you are, no matter what you look like, no matter where you come from, no matter who you love, we welcome you. We love you. Let's truly dig deep into what those lines mean, so it's not just lines, but we are truly living it, where it's a prayer and a charge. This is the Sunday night fireside talk tonight, as well as a class. And thank you for your engagement and your participation. And we will close this up now, saying amen together. Thank you. Let us have a prayer now, and please put your prayer requests in the chat. And if you need prayer, or if you know someone